While everyone was distracted by stock markets and political noise, the rules of the global economy didn't just change this morning, they were erased. China just turned off the lights on the American century. And the terrifying part, the US military might be too broke to flip the switch back on.
Now let's be absolutely clear. That wasn't some future prediction I just read. It's a direct quote from a classified strategic assessment that's been making the rounds at the very highest levels of government. According to this document, the resource war isn't coming. It's here. It's happening right now. And what I'm about to walk you through is a breakdown of that intelligence.
So this briefing, it lays out 5 critical fronts in this new conflict. You've got the Silver Siege, the Refinery Trap, the Perfect Storm, what it calls American paralysis, and a final chilling conclusion. Welcome to the new Yalta. So let's get right into it. Okay, so here's the first move. On January 1st, 2026, Beijing flipped a switch. A total comprehensive ban on all exports of processed industrial silver and something called photovoltaic silver paste. And I want you to be crystal clear on this, because the briefing hammers this point home. This is not a tariff. It's not a negotiating tactic. This is a weapon. It was designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to structurally dismantle America's ability to reindustrialize and rearm. To really get the gravity of this, you have to understand the specific target. We're not talking about raw silver ore you dig out of the ground. We're talking about this, 99.999% pure refined silver. It's the most conductive element we know of. Basically, it's the irreplaceable nerve tissue of all modern technology. Without it, forget your iPhone, forget solar panels, and here's the kicker, forget the guidance systems in the Pentagon's entire missile arsenal. It is the literal lifeblood of our world.
And this right here, this brings us to the absolute core of the strategy, what the intelligence brief calls the refinery trap. You see, for years, the folks in Washington thought they had this covered. They focused on getting raw materials from allies like Mexico and Peru. But according to this brief, that was a fatal, catastrophic miscalculation. And here's the part the media just isn't getting.
Here's the core of the problem, and it's brutally simple. For the last 30 years, we in the West systematically shipped all the dirty work of refining critical minerals overseas, almost all of it to China. The result is the perfect trap. The US and its allies, we have the raw ore. You can think of it as the crude oil. But China, they went and built every single gas station on the planet. And you know what? It doesn't matter how much crude oil you own if you have no way to turn it into gasoline.
And the trap gets even more precise. To build a solar panel, you need this highly specialized stuff called silver paste. It's kind of like the invisible glue that makes the whole thing work. Well, guess what? China controls over 80% of the global production of this paste. So by turning off the tap, they've turned every American solar factory into a useless assembly line, a building full of parts with no glue. They're killing the Made in America dream before it even gets started.
All right, let's talk about the timing of all this, because this is where it goes from a smart move to absolute strategic genius. This wasn't a random act. According to the briefing, that date, January 1st, 2026, was chosen with surgical precision. It's a masterstroke, designed to hit the United States at the exact intersection of its greatest vulnerabilities.
This timeline from the brief, it tells the whole story. Let's just walk through it. From 2022 to 2025, U.S. military arsenals get drained dry, supporting proxy wars. At the exact same time, Washington commits all its political capital to these huge 2030 climate goals, which requires a massive solar build-out. And then, the hammer falls. January 1st, 2026, the ban hits. It's perfectly timed to create what the analysts are calling a death valley, a multi-year gap before any new American refineries could possibly come online.
So you have to ask yourself, right? Why this exact moment? Why not a year earlier or a year later? Well, the brief is very clear. The goal wasn't just to cause a little economic pain. The goal was to achieve 2 massive strategic objectives simultaneously with one single move.
And here they are. First, you cripple the Pentagon. After years of draining stockpiles, the Defense Department is signing billions in contracts to rebuild. But now those factories can't get the high-purity silver for the missile guidance systems. It's a silent disarmament. Second, you kill the green agenda. Washington set a 2030 deadline. Beijing just canceled it in 2026. You see, they waited. They waited until the U.S. was militarily depleted, politically committed, and industrially exposed. And then they turned off the lights.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Why isn't the United States retaliating? Why isn't there a response? This is the part of the briefing that is truly chilling. The U.S. isn't responding because it can't. It's caught in a terrifying strategic standoff. Its hands are completely tied.
Now, don't get me wrong, Washington has what the brief calls its economic nuclear options. The first is the Malacca dilemma. The US Navy could blockade the Strait of Malacca, choking off 80% of China's oil. But think about that symmetry. They cut off our silver, the lifeblood of modern tech. We cut off their oil, the lifeblood of their entire nation. The result, according to this assessment, would be a collapse of the entire global economy within days.
Option 2 is the swift weapon. The U.S. Treasury could, with the push of a button, just eject all Chinese banks from the dollar system, freeze them out. But the blowback would be catastrophic. China would almost certainly dump its $1 trillion in U.S. bonds, potentially collapsing the dollar itself. Both options, they're just mutually assured destruction.
So here's the crucial point. China is making a calculated gamble. They are betting that America's internal political division is so severe, so deep, that Washington simply doesn't have the political will to risk a world war over the price of a medal. And right now, that bet appears to be paying off.
So, where does all this leave us? The final section of the assessment is blunt. It titles this new era, Welcome to the New Yalta. And it means exactly what it sounds like. Just like the original Yalta Conference carved up the world, this event marks the definitive end of globalization. We are watching the world fracture, in real time, into two competing blocks. One side is rich in finance, but starved of materials, and the other side controls the resources and the factories.
And that brings us to the core conclusion of this entire briefing, a principle the analysts are calling matter versus paper, and it's brutally simple. In a long fight, you cannot print your way out of a physical resource shortage. You can't 3D print high-purity silver. You can't just conjure up lithium with monetary policy. At the end of the day, factories run on metal, not on currency.
I want you to let that sink in for a second, because this is the final verdict of the assessment. In this new era, the nation that controls the physical refineries will always defeat the nation that only controls the printing press. Metal outweighs money.
This isn't a forecast anymore. It's an announcement of the new reality we live in. A formal division of the world, where supply chains are no longer global, they're weapons. The question is no longer how to win the old game. The old game is over. The question now is, how do you survive the new one? Welcome to the new Yalta.